Oh, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Next Steps webinar for Workflow Max. This is David from Valued, and it's 8:30 in the morning here, depending upon where you are in the world. We're going to give it a few minutes just for more attendees to join the session. So it's not quite 8:30 just yet. We've got a couple of minutes yet. So we'll let people make their way in, and we'll see once we can get started what the situation is. Just hit the 8:30 mark. We'll give people another minute or two just to come in and make sure everybody's got the opportunity to join and see what we are covering today. I know it's a nice early start. I hope you've all got your cuppas with you. One more minute and we'll get started. Right, we are. Well, good morning, folks. I hope you're all well, and I hope it's sunny for you and not pouring down the way it has been the last few days. But we're all here today, and welcome to the Next Steps of Workflow Max by BlueRock. So if you've been keeping an eye on what's been happening, if you've attended any of BlueRock's own seminars, or if you've attended our seminar previously, then again, you will have a little bit of an idea about what is happening with the development of the BlueRock product. Today, we're going to go through just some of the very straightforward details in terms of what's been happening. We're going to have a look at the timeline and where we sit within that at the minute, what has happened so far, and what is ahead of us prior to the launch of the product. We are going to look at then at a bit of an update about the product. We've got a lot more screens that we can show you now. You get a much better feel of what you can expect from the product once it goes live. We're then going to talk about the migration process. So again, looking at what that will involve, what screens you can expect to work through, the process itself and how it will operate. And then we're going to look at some considerations in terms of getting ready for the migration. After that, there will be a chance for Q&A. So if anybody has any questions, by all means, please add those into the Q&A box at the end of the session or as we go, and we will work through those and see what answers we can provide for you. I'm not going to say that I've got all of the answers right now, but I have quite a few answers that I can provide. And if there's anything that is still outstanding, I can always circle back and we can post that on our social channels and let you know. So without further ado, let's have a look at the timeline. So there we go. The roadmap as it stands right now, you can see we've just surpassed the August point. So we're about midway according to what we've got here. So we know that the product started development way back, actually prior to March. It was just before March when they started building Workflow Max version 2. We've gone through the customer feedback process now. The website is still open, so you can still go to Workflow Max V2 or version 2 or the BlueRock website, and you will find the feature request portal within there. That is going to continue taking your requests. But in terms of adding items to the live release when this happens in December for the beta, then that part has actually closed. So as it stands right now, there are about 25 items, 25 new improvements that are going to be added into the system over and above what we expected from the original Workflow Max platform. There are another 10, I believe, items under development. They will not be ready for release, but they will be ready shortly afterwards. And there are about a further 9 items in consideration in terms of what improvements could be made after that point. So as we know, BlueRock's commitment is that there will be at least identical functionality between the existing platform and what we will expect from their version of Workflow Max. So yes, I would still encourage people to add their thoughts, their requests to the portal. So if you've never been there yet, please do go in, add your thoughts. Anything that you believe will improve the product is valuable. So anything that you can suggest, add it to the mix, and it will all be considered. So moving on from this point where we are right now, they are about to go into the portion of building out the report functionality within the system. And this is all with the deadline date of December for the beta release. So if anybody wants to have early access, all they need to do is to register for that beta release, and you'll get it slightly sooner than the main release of the product. I would always say do bear with them as they release this. Any beta is just that. It is not the fully fledged product. It's able to be used, it's releasable, but it will be still being worked on until the full release in February. So it is an early bird opportunity, you would say. But certainly, if you want to be part of that early adopter group, then absolutely register for that. Obviously, go live and then the beginning of migration will happen in February. So you will have the window of opportunity between February and the 26th of June of 2024 to migrate across your existing information from Workflow Max into the new platform. Again, this is not the end of their development. As we said, ongoing development will continue moving forward for the next months and years. You know, this is absolutely going to be a live product that they're going to continue to improve. But certainly as far as your data in your current system, you will have those few months to be able to then move this across. So if you're not adopting early, if you're wanting to watch people test the water for you, that's fine. But do keep in mind the time scale and the availability of your existing platform before it is end of life on the 26th of June, 2024. So as we said, the committed features within the product are exactly what we would expect. You'll see that there's a host of features that already exist, as you can imagine. So lead management, clients and contacts, quotes and estimates, job management, scheduling, as it stands right now, timesheets, all of that, purchases and suppliers, invoicing, dashboards, reporting, the open API and integrations. Yes, you'll notice I've skipped over one there. Multi-currency, again, this is absolutely a committed feature, but it's an improvement. Obviously, currencies are something that the current platform does not understand. So multi-currency absolutely is part and parcel of the furniture in Workflow Max by BlueRock. We'll talk about some of the new features that we can expect to see as we move through. So when we do get to have a look at the product update, we'll be able to see some of those changes in situ in the various screens. And I'll try and explain some of those as we go. I've got to admit, they tend to be the exciting part. It's nice to see what's going to be new and things that we couldn't do before that we'll be able to do moving forwards. So again, I'll try and give you as much information as I can about that part of the system. So let's have a look and see what screens we can show you. Firstly, let's have a look at what the client record will look like in the new product. So previously, we've been able to show screens about quotations because that was one of those earlier parts that was mocked up and made available. Now we can see what the main client record is going to look like. You can see that in terms of content, it's nothing that we won't expect. So your current tabs within Workflow Max, very, very similar. Obviously, one or two renaming items, so overview instead of information, but we've got leads, quotes, jobs, invoices, notes and documents, everything that we would expect to see within a client record. You can see that we've got those headline financial figures as they exist right now. So again, invoices awaiting payment and overdue, and the total WIP standing against them. And you can see that we've then got the client overview with some of the key headline information. So certain things have moved slightly. You can see that, for example, client type is now visible down underneath there instead of being at the top. We've got the business structure now visible there as well. We've got phone numbers, email addresses, websites, who the partner manager and manager are, or if not partner, then account manager would be looking after the product or looking after the client. And you can see that on the right-hand side, we've got that ability for adding contacts to the client or groups for the client as well. One interesting point of note in terms of adding certain things, it will not take you away from this screen. It will produce a pop-up window like this, or a modal, as is often referred to. But what this is going to do is then just keep you in the same screen, so you're not constantly clicking backwards and forwards. This is quite a theme within the new product. They're very keen to streamline the amount of clicks that you need to make to do your job on a day-to-day basis. So you will find that there's a lot less need to move backwards and forwards or in and out of different entire pages. It's going to be just a lot quicker and a lot more straightforward. You can see there that we've got that ability to add a contact. And here you can see it is slightly different. Yes, you can create a new contact, but you will also be able to associate an existing contact with a client. And the same will be true for suppliers as well. But what this means is that we do not necessarily have to have duplicate records if, for example, the same director runs 6 companies. We're not going to have that person 6 times. We will be able to see them as a single contact record that spans multiple clients. So that, again, an excellent improvement and certainly something that's going to save time and effort. If we move on to have a look at the job manager, we can see that, again, the screens have been revamped. They're cleaner, they're tidier, and they are broader in their scope. So particularly in terms of the job manager, you can see that we've now got, first of all, color coding is becoming a thing within the product. So you'll see this is true within things like quotations as well. But you can see how we've got different colors associated with different job states, for example. And it just makes it that little bit easier to distinguish one from the other. You'll also see that a popular request is that dates are now given in full. So rather than just the 4th of February, we have the 4th of February 2023. So again, this is now allowing you to distinguish between a job that is ending this year and perhaps a job that is ending in a year or 2 years' time. So just a lot more clarity in terms of that. We've still got the same idea of progress as our percentage bar based on time. And we've still got our priority as our little exclamation marks. So they are still in there. And again, you can see that you've got your quick searches in terms of jobs starting today, due to complete this week, or indeed overdue. You've still got a quick search facility within there. So again, we can type into that and it's a dynamic search. So as we start typing, it will thin the list to find the records that we're looking for. So it's no longer a case of having to push that search button. It will be searching for us. And again, there's also filters that we can apply within here as well. Moving on. This is the new calendar view. So this is quite a departure from what we've seen previously. It's, again, cleaner, tidier. You might say, yes, it's the same sort of calendar that we've seen before. There is one big difference here, and that is that where we've got these individual items listed on a given day, if we click on them, it will, or click on the date, it will produce a pop-out on the right-hand side that is then listing what is occurring on that day. So it is, again, really useful to be able to see without having to navigate away from a page exactly what it is that you're going to need to work on any given day. We can also see that in staff allocation, this is changing quite considerably as well. So what we will have is essentially a list of tasks available, searchable by job or by task, etc. We can thin this down to make it easier to add these to our staff members. And then you can see that each staff member is listed. So it will essentially be one above the next above the next. And we can drag and drop tasks into a particular date for a particular staff member. So a very clean, very easy process in terms of being able to populate the workload of particular individuals. So this, again, so straightforward, very, very easy for us to manage, and a lot more modern in its approach. You'll have seen this potentially in other systems in the marketplace. This is now something that we will be able to enjoy within Workflow Max. Let's have a look at the job record itself then. So again, a cleaner, tidier, more easily understood layout. You can see that we've still got our heading tabs at the top. So we've got our information page. We've got our phases, otherwise known as folders. We've got timesheets, milestones, notes, documents, financials. Again, slide changes. So for example, milestones has its own tab now. So does phases. Instead of having a small box on the left, which was rather awkward to manage in terms of folders, they've now been given a little bit more space to work with within the context of the job. You can see that we've got very obvious headline information made available to us. So there we've got the time available on the job, whether we are under or over, and again, what our profit margins would be with regard to our jobs. We can see that we've got an instant recognition of whether we are within our quoted budgets, our profit plan, or whether we are exceeding those. And again, we can see then that we've got that projected profit figure that obviously not populated in the example, but it's going to then track directly against what we have quoted the client. We'll be able to see that below that, well, there's a slightly different slide. This is just one from the financial tab. This is then going to give us a slight change in where to find certain items. What you would have seen in the existing version is that most of your options are populated on the left-hand side. In order to give more space on the screen, these have simply been placed in a drop-down list. So again, easily accessible at the top of the screen, and we can make our selections to add new quotes, invoices, purchase orders, etc. Just very, very easy to access that information, but giving main priority to the information that you would want to see within the financial tab. In terms of tasks and costs as they would appear on your information tab or your overview, then that is exactly as it would be before. You can see though that certain things have been brought to the fore. So where we can see on the right-hand side where a task is billable, for example, or a cost is billable, this is now something that you don't have to drill into the individual task or cost to control. You can literally see and control it from this main page. So again, less clicks involved in maintaining a project record and in making sure that it is run on the right billable or non-billable basis. In terms of timesheets, you can see that this again is just cleaned, made easier to view. You can see that it's the same basic information. So it's the idea of the date, the staff member, the task and the time. Is it billable or non-billable? And again, adding our notes to this, very straightforward. And the timesheets themselves are then listed beneath that. What we no longer have to do, and again, in that same vein of removing the need to move between different pages, is we can manage that timesheet information directly from this screen. So you can see on the right-hand side, that is an open box listing the time in the entry. If we need to edit that, we can edit it in line rather than having to click through into an article in order to edit that particular timesheet entry. We'll take a quick look at some of the settings. Not many of these have been made available, but it gives us an indication of the sort of thing that we can expect. Here, for example, custom field management, we can see that it's a very similar sort of layout. We've still got the overall list of custom fields. We've also then got the lists for clients, contacts, job costs, job tasks, leads. Notice quotes is in there now. Yes, we know that quotes are going to have custom fields in them. Suppliers and timesheets as were previously available as well. You'll see though that from the list of custom fields, each one of them now has a checkbox next to it, telling us whether it is optional or not. Again, this is a real bonus. We will be able to make certain custom fields mandatory. So if, for example, you must have, let's say, a delivery date or something such as that within a quote, then you can absolutely make that a mandatory field, and you can make sure that that has to be filled in order to then save the given record. So this is something that is a brand new feature and can be potentially really, really beneficial. However, looking at staff, we'll see that this is potentially one of the areas where there's been one of the biggest changes. You can see there that there is the mention of the word roles. And this again harks back to a frequently requested item in that there's never previously been a way to copy the details for a staff member when creating a new staff member. So we've constantly got to add in multiple ticks in boxes to create a brand new record. And it can be a really slow process if, for example, you're setting up 50 staff in a brand new system, or even if you're taking on 2 or 3 new starters and you know that they're going to perform the same role, for example. So this is the concept of roles. Again, it exists in other systems. It will now be available within Workflow Max. So we can see that we've got client names, etc. When we look at the roles, we will be able to describe those in whatever terms we want. We can see that here we've got, for example, full access, view only, and no access. But you will be able to create roles of your own design. And each of those roles will then have a preset, or you will be able to set the list of permissions and privileges that that role requires. The benefit of that is that you will be able to then simply apply a role to a given staff member and it will populate their set of privileges. They will still be editable, so you will be able to change those individually if you need to, for example, make very small changes, but the overall access level will then be defined by that role. We can see here again that we've got those privileges listed and whether something is full access or limited in certain respects. So again, rather like the abilities now where we have a client, can we view a client, edit a client, create or delete a client, these will be now available as part of a drop-down list for that particular privilege. So again, really, really easy for us to then start to build these records out. You'll see there at the top of the screen, it also does give us the ability to copy privileges from an existing role, exactly as we mentioned there. So if we are not wanting to set this up in a unique fashion, we can simply select the role and pre-build those, at least the starting point of what we want those settings for that staff member to be. So this brings us more to a little bit of just a rundown of some of the key highlights in terms of what's under development by BlueRock right now. We've mentioned quite a few of these already as we've gone through the slides, but we can see here that we've got multi-currency, absolutely. We've got tasks as options within quotes. So this is something that was new. Previously, it was only costs that were able to be optional. We can now make tasks optional as well. The ability to delete multiple tasks or costs from a quote as a single option. So again, if you currently pull a quote together from a job. If some of the details within there are not required within the quote, then you've got to individually delete those. And some of those could be dozens or scores of items long. So then being able to delete these in one quick go, highlight the items, click delete, is going to be so much quicker in terms of restructuring and rebuilding those quotations. Re-inviting a user. This is, again, one that we've often come into contact with. If you've invited somebody into the system and if they've not followed up on that email, they haven't logged in, their invitation expires, and we're in a situation that it's a bit of a limbo position. You've got to delete that user, create them again. If you've already assigned them to certain jobs, you've got that to do again. It can be quite the headache. So a simple change to be able to allow that invitation to be sent out again to that staff member just makes it so much easier. Attaching documents, reports, indeed files of any variety to invoices as we email them out is now going to be part of the system. So again, no more need to download a copy of the invoice as a document in its own right and then email it from Outlook or Google. You will be able to do all of that from within Workflow Max itself. And again, it's just going to streamline that process and make things a lot more straightforward. There will be a greater audit trail in certain areas of the system, very particularly clients, jobs, and invoices. We will have a much clearer idea of who has made what changes within these various records and at what stage. So certainly if you see that things have changed and you need to track back when it happened or who did it, that will become much more readily available within the system. You'll be able to select folders for tasks or costs as you are adding those tasks or costs to your jobs. So again, previously you had to add the task, go to manage folders, select the item that you wanted to add to the folder, tell it what folder you wanted to add it to, and then save those details. Now it will be a very simple drop-down selection. When you're adding your task or cost to the job, you'll be able to pick which folder it belongs in at that time. So again, just so much more straightforward. You'll be able to associate, as we have seen, contacts with multiple clients. The list is actually, there's about, as I said, about 25 changes, upgrades, essentially, that will be in place when the beta launches in December. This is just some of the highlights. Other items would include the fact that, along with multi-currency, we will also see that tax rates, for example, will be mirrored from Xero. So if you are integrating with Xero, it will absolutely be able to read those taxes and then bring those into Workflow Max. So if you have several different VAT rates, for example, they will be visible within Workflow Max. You will also be able to add them manually as well. So if you are not a Xero user or you are not connecting it to a financial system, you will still be able to create and populate any tax amounts and tax codes that you will need within the system. So quite a lot for us to look forward to. I hope those screens have been useful and given you an idea of what the product will feel like. But again, there will be more details coming out as time goes by. Obviously, the next session of these like this from us is going to be in December, just as the beta launches. So hopefully we'll see plenty of information prior to that point. But let's move on. Let's talk now about the migration process itself. This is, again, going to be as simple as possible. BlueRock wants to remove as many barriers as they can to ensure that this is easy and that people are not being tripped up by the process. First of all, what data is going to come across? Well, we know that all of your baseline information from the setup of your system will be translated into the new platform. So your settings, your staff records, your clients and suppliers, your contacts, your tasks and your costs lists, your lead information. So now moving on to look at your actual records that you keep within the system. So leads, quotes, jobs, the job costs and tasks that appear within those jobs, the timesheets in your system and the notes attached to them, your invoices, the notes and documents that you have within your clients and suppliers. All of this information is going to be brought through via the migration process and will be then in the new platform without you having to do anything other than wait. So this is all reassuring. It should speak to the fact that they're trying exceptionally hard to make sure that this is going to be a painless process. And again, they are still working on improving what is going to happen with this as well. There's a particular order in which this will happen. So you will see that first of all, it's going to go through essentially setting up the background of the system. So settings will come in first, followed by staff. We will then have clients and suppliers at that point and their contact records. If you're using Workflow Max Premium, then the relationships that exist between your different clients will also then be brought in. And then we will see that the task and cost lists populating the background of the system will be brought in as a sort of the final element of this. So essentially that will be the blank slate of your system setup. The second tier is then going to be those records, as we mentioned. So your leads, your quotes, your jobs. And then once the jobs are in place, the costs and tasks within those jobs will be populated. And then finally, your timesheets, your invoices, and your documents now, that has been confirmed. So documents that are stored within clients and suppliers and within jobs will all be migrated across as well. So again, far less to do than was ever believed possible previously. This is really streamlining this to the point where you will hopefully have a very hands-off approach. You will go through a series of screens, so hopefully this will give you an idea of what to expect. You will fill in your details and you will be essentially starting a trial within the system. So again, nothing new there. We will put your company details in, etc. But you will then be given the option of whether you are migrating or whether you're creating a new account. This is the point at which it will also ask if you are working with or using an implementation partner. So this is, again, just a tick box option to begin with. It is simply saying, you know, if you're working with me, for example, or any of the other partners that are out there, say that you're doing so, and then it will bring you to a drop-down list where you simply select the partner name of the people that you are working with. Now, I would stress at this point, this does not necessarily mean that you are engaged in a project with them. It could mean that you simply ask questions of these particular partners at certain times. So, for example, if you generally come to me to ask you questions, it would be my name. If you generally come to Liz from Gingersnap, then it would be her name, etc. So again, this is all just about making sure that BlueRock understand essentially who your point of contact is. It will then describe the migration process for you. So here you can see that you're going to connect your account. Obviously, this is if you are migrating as opposed to setting up a new account. And it will then give you an idea of the time scale of migrating your data. It can only be general about this. Obviously, if your business has been using Workflow Max for a year, there will be far less data in there potentially than a business that has been using Workflow Max for 12 or 13 years. So it's going to give you a brief rundown of what to expect. As it says, most migrations will take 2 to 4 hours. And there is a queuing process. So it will basically work through your data when an appropriate slot in the queue becomes available. But if you do have large quantities of data, obviously this can take longer. So do give it up to 24 hours to potentially bring your data across. The current advice is that if you, for example, set the migration away as you left the office on Monday, it would very likely be ready for you on Tuesday morning. And then you can see there is the option of inviting your team. Certainly staff is going to be one of the interesting ones. They are absolutely going to be migrated across. So that is a given. You will not have to repopulate the details of your staff in any way, shape or form. But what it will do as part of this process is give you the choice as to when you send their invitations out. So for example, you may wish to vet the system first, to look at the system, make sure that you're happy with people's privileges, roles, etc., and then send their invitations out. So it's absolutely fine if you want to stagger that process and essentially say that then we send the invites later on. You'll then log in using Xero as usual at this stage. And then from there, it will give you a brief rundown of what is happening. So before the migration starts, it will tell you what's about to happen. You can see these are placeholder screens at the minute, but they will have obviously valuable information in at the time. And once you click Start Migration, it's going to bring you to a progress screen. So this is then going to give you at least a very visual confirmation of how your migration is progressing towards completion. The length of time it will require will vary, we know, but just keep an eye on this, whether you are starting this in the beginning of your day and working it through till the lunchtime, or however it may be, this screen will give you that indication. And once it's worked its way through, then you know that everything is ready for you. So what happens after the migration? The migration itself is, while an extremely automated process, not going to be able to do absolutely everything for you. You're going to need to reconnect any of your integrated apps. This is not going to be a difficult process. It's simply going to be a matter of pointing them from the old Workflow Max to the new Workflow Max, essentially disconnecting and reconnecting. All that they do with the original Workflow Max will be what they are doing with the new version as well. BlueRock have gone to great lengths to produce what they call a transformation layer. In other words, they are ensuring that your existing app needs no changes in its own platform. It will simply recognize what it needs to do within the new Workflow Max without having to be told anything new. So that makes the process as simple as possible, but they will still need to be reconnected. You will need to recreate your custom reports. This is probably the biggest of all of these items. The new Workflow Max is going to use a new reporting structure. So because it's built on a new platform, it is in no way capable of translating those old reports into its new format. The reports themselves will be still very easy to construct, but we will need to go through and rebuild those. You'll need, as I just mentioned, to re-invite your users. So whether you do that at the point of migration or at a later stage, absolutely, this is then bringing them back into the system once you've reviewed their permissions. And you will need to upload your custom document templates. Now, that is still being worked on by BlueRock at the minute. There is the chance that these might be able to be automatically brought across from the previous platform. But at the very worst, this would simply be an exercise of downloading those Word templates from the original Workflow Max and then re-uploading these into place in the new platform. So it's, again, not a difficult process. It's very straightforward, but we'll wait and see what happens with that particular process between now and December. So what is there for you guys to consider between now and when the beta or the live launch in February take place? You've got a few short months now to really decide how you're going to deal with this. If it is your intention that you're migrating across to Workflow Max by BlueRock, then I would always say, and these are fairly general pieces of advice, but appoint somebody within the business to look after this. It might seem obvious, but it's not necessarily a given. Many business owners like to take charge of these things themselves. It doesn't have to be you. You know, you've got a busy plate as it is. So if there's somebody within the business who can support you with this, they can be appointed your champion and they can then have the responsibility and take upon the work of preparing the information in your existing platform ready for it to be migrated across. Review your current system. So have a look at its content and its structure. So this is, as it says there, assess your process. Obviously, you've worked with Workflow Max, you've built it in a certain way to reflect your working practice and your style of operation. Have a look at what you've built and use this as an opportunity to make any changes that you feel are necessary. If you've only just started using the system in recent years, then it may be that there's very little that you want to change. But if this is a system that you've had in place for a decade, then there may well have been operational changes in your business that are currently not reflected within how your system is set up. So this is an ideal opportunity to look at that structure and map out any changes that you wish to make. So again, that is absolutely something that can be prepared for when you're then looking at amending the details that are put in place in the new version of the system. Making a plan for cleansing your data as well. So right now, again, if you've got years and years worth of data in Workflow Max, it's entirely up to you what information you want to keep before the migration takes place. This decision has been taken that any data in your existing platform will be migrated. So this is all of your historical items, your current items, so clients and the archive, all of that will come across, all of your historical jobs, all of your timesheets, all of this information will be dragged through into the new system. Now, that is good. It's not a bad thing to look at that. But what it does mean is that you may have a lot of information in there that is no longer relevant. If you've got clients that go back 10 years that you may never deal with again, those companies might not even exist anymore, then we don't need to really populate those within the new system. There are two approaches that you can take. One is that you can look at making those amendments within your existing platform. Alternatively, you can drag everything in and then make those amendments in the new Workflow Max. So that is still a potential option. I usually say cleanse data before bringing it into a new system so that you're starting fresh and clean. There is benefits to be had from actually doing it the opposite way around this time. Workflow Max by Xero has very few bulk options in terms of deleting information. There will be more bulk options available for deleting things within Workflow Max by BlueRock. So I know I have several clients who have very long lists of, say, tasks, costs, archived clients. You will absolutely have bulk options for deleting certain things like these and making that process so much simpler. So what could take hours in the current platform may only take minutes in the new platform. So do give that a consideration as well. Again, if anybody has questions around that, we can always look for answers over the coming months to help you make your plan as concrete as possible. And also remember that help is available. You do not have to go through this process alone. If this sounds baffling or if this is giving you pause for concern, you're worried that you might miss something, then the implementation community is always there to assist you. We have gone through this dozens, if not hundreds of times with clients through the years. And all we want to do is make sure that you're getting the best possible experience of migrating across to the new platform and being ready to hit the ground running. So I've probably talked quite enough right now. We took 40 minutes to go through that. So these are usually about 45 minutes. We've got one or two questions at the minute. I will take some time to go through these. If anybody does still have questions, I'm more than happy to answer those, and we can make sure you've got as much information as possible. So let's have a look at this. Will we be able to transfer a quote to a different job, for example? Now, that's a good question. If we are setting up a job, but then raise a quote via the main quote tab, and not via the job, can we then assign it to an existing job rather than having to recreate it from scratch within the job? While we haven't had a specific answer directly to that question, I'm going to suggest that at this stage, the answer will probably be no. So the intention is very much to provide identical functionality to what you have at the minute with specific exceptions, some of which we've gone through in the course of this session today. What they have done, as we mentioned earlier, is made it much easier to then adapt those quotations that we might be creating from within a job itself. So as we progress through the course of a job and we've got additional tasks, costs, etc. within there, then when we come to create a new quote within that job, there is absolutely a bulk method then of removing unwanted items. So that streamlines that process greatly. It's not multiple clicks to have to go in and out of individual items and delete them one at a time. It will be much more streamlined. But that doesn't mean that it's going to be as simple as saying, I'm in my quote section, I've raised a quote, and I now want to add it to this existing job. I think as a suggestion, that would be a really, really useful feature. So again, if you can head over to the ideas portal within BlueRock's website for Workflow Max version 2. Feel free to add that as a suggestion in there for a new feature. And again, they will look at all of these and take them into consideration. Don't be daunted when you see that there's about 1,400 items on there already. Again, it might be that this has already been suggested. With so many items, I haven't had the ability to trawl through them all. But again, good ideas are always more welcome. You will see that many of these have lots of upvotes against them. So people are already, putting their weight of feeling behind some of these ideas. And as we said, the most popular and the most viable are the ones that are then being translated into the system, either at the point of launch or over the coming period as they plan their future development. Any other questions that we might have at the minute? Well, nothing else just at the moment. In which case, I will simply say that if you do have questions as you move forward, please let me know. I will be more than happy to answer those individually for you, and I can always source that information if I am not in possession of it straight away. We've got one more question there. Will we be able to copy a folder and all of the tasks and costs to duplicate it within a quote? That's an interesting question. This might speak more towards the idea of templating. So it is absolutely possible to save a folder as a template, i.e. a job template, and then that template can be applied again and again within different jobs. That's the normal approach that we would expect within this. I would not suggest that it will be likely that you will be able to copy the third folder in quote number 1 into being the first folder in quote number 2. It's unlikely that they're going to use that type of concept as a way of moving information or bulk adding information to a new quote. But certainly I would say that it's going to be possible using those templates. So again, if you need any guidance or advice on that, let me know and we'll be more than happy to help with regard to that. Certainly, anybody else got any questions at this point? More than happy to answer anything if anybody's got any questions. Oh, yeah, one more. Will we be able to create the same custom reports within the new version? Yes, is the very simple answer. If anything, we will have greater flexibility in our reports in the new version. The new reporting platform, or the new platform itself, has a far more integrated data set. So a lot of information that would have been essentially only available in separate reports previously, there's a good chance we may be able to bring that into a far smaller number of reports to be able to develop the information that we want to show within the business. So, for example, you might find that you might want detailed quote information as part of a job report. Perhaps that will become available. We don't know yet because this obviously is just about to go into development, but we've been assured that there will be at least the same capabilities that we've got right now. One common question I get around that is very much with regard to monthly summary reports. People are not terribly happy that they only go for 6 months at a time at the minute. I've got to admit the reason being is that when the original platform had them available for 12-month periods, that used to crash the system. It was too much data for the report generator to handle, and it just used to die. It used to stop, and you used to have to reload the platform and start again. So that was why Xero originally limited it to a 6-month report. With the new system being much quicker, and it actually is a lot quicker, then we hopefully will see that things like this might become possible again in the future. So we'll keep an eye out and see what happens with that. Well, we've hit just after the 9:15 mark at the moment, so that's pretty much our 45 minutes come to a conclusion. Has anybody got any final questions? Otherwise, I will wrap up and we'll call that a day. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today, folks. I have really appreciated you being here. There will be a further webinar in December, so it'll be about 3 months before we meet again. I am still here in between times, so if you need anything, if you have questions, please reach out. More than happy to talk to you and make sure that you're ready for the migration and that you have got everything that you need to make sure that is a smooth process. Have a wonderful day, folks. I look forward to seeing you next time, and we will see you very, very soon. Take care for now. Thanks very much. Bye for now.